From the Oklahoma newsroom, it's time for another Thunder Thursday. I'm Jenni Carlson here with our Thunder coverage team, columnist Barry Tramel, Thunder beat writer Erik Horne, Thunder beat writer Brett Dawson. And guys, there's been a lot of news, unexpectedly so to a point, I guess, about Enes Kanter. The big man we knew from exit interviews was headed on a worldwide tour, but the worldwide tour gets cut short last week. Brett, Erik, you guys were front and center in trying to track down what was happening. Erik, kind of set the scene for us and just remind us of all the crazy, I guess, that happened to Enes Kanter.
Well, Enes posted a video to his Twitter feed on Saturday morning. Basically, he said that he had been stopped in the Romanian airport and he couldn't get out because his passport, which was a Turkish passport, had been canceled. And he then went on to call the Turkish president the Hitler of our century. He called him a dictator. Kanter's long been in opposition to the current Turkish regime, and he directly blamed them for having his passport, what he called, canceled once he was in the Romanian airport. He was trying to get into Romania, and he couldn't get in. So then the effort turned to, how do we get this guy back to the United States as quickly as possible?
Well, Brett, I mean, Kanter sort of, as has become his way, sort of was having fun with it, taking pictures with people, the video, all of that. But the truth is, if he gets sent back to Turkey, things could get pretty serious for him.
Well, they definitely would get very serious. You know, he's a supporter of a movement that the Turkish government considers to be its primary enemy, its #1 enemy, the Hizmet movement. The current President Erdogan, who is, by all accounts, not a good guy, considers that to be the #1 enemy of the state. I talked to Joshua Landis. He's the professor at the University of Oklahoma who is in charge of the Center for Middle East Studies. And what he said is that, you know, that there certainly is an element of danger to this. You have a very notable guy, Enes Kanter, a very famous citizen of Turkey, who not only isn't voicing his support for the current president and isn't just silent about this movement, but is calling himself a part of it, saying he supports it. That puts him in a very difficult position. Had he been returned to Turkey, he almost certainly would have been arrested for basically trying to subvert the state. And most likely, the way Enes Kanter put it to us is, you wouldn't have heard from me on that second day once I got to Turkey. He most likely would have been in jail. And according to some studies that Enes Kanter himself cited from Amnesty International, things are not good in Turkish jails. You do not want to be in one of those prisons at this point.
Definitely not. We'll talk about what this might mean for his trade value in a sec, but Barry, I mean, for the Thunder, a very buttoned-down organization that keeps its guys from being outspoken, Kanter has been outspoken, continues to be outspoken, and near as we can tell, the Thunder continues to support him even in that outspokenness.
Well, the one thing the Thunder does is it supports its players even when they sort of go against the company model. You're right, they would prefer Enes Kanter to be low-key, to not make a scene, not make waves, not get sort of detained in Romania. You know, when Kanter told us he was going to go on this world tour, and when he said, I'm going to go to Korea, the good one, we thought, well, at least he's going to avoid international incident. Well, it turns out no. No, the Thunder most definitely wishes this had not all happened. But they tend to, you know, they tend to support the players no matter what they do. Long examples of that. So I think they would like to get Enes Kanter just settled and say, listen, you know, you've made your point, and we were talking earlier. This has become a stage for Enes Kanter. Being detained in Romania actually let him get his word out even more that he doesn't like what's going on in Turkey. He doubled down after he got to New York. So, you know, Enes might be ready for a little bit of some downtime.
Well, and you know, like you said, I mean, the Thunder always has been very supportive. Prayer room for Enes Kanter, making sure he's got the food that he wants to eat as a devout Muslim. But you know, he's a guy on the court, fellas, that has been talked about in terms of trade for quite some time. This gigantic salary coming off the bench, a big man in a small man's league right now. Brett, how much is trade value affected considering the detainment, the trials to get home, everything that's happened since then?
Well, certainly some. I mean, he's been through what should be the hardest part of this because his passport's been revoked and he's returned to the United States where he has a green card and he's a lawful permanent resident. That means he can't leave the country right now. They're going to try to work out something that allows him, whether he's playing for the Thunder or somebody else, to get to Toronto. That's the important part from a job standpoint. He's got to be able to play the Raptors in Toronto. But the most difficult challenge is probably out of the way. The thing is, this still introduces an element of the unknown. Is somebody who is a supporter of Erdogan going to try to make some kind of statement by doing something to Enes Kanter? Probably not, but maybe, and just that maybe, just that the fact that it's a greater than zero chance, that introduces an element of unknown. Enes Kanter's already got some things that make him difficult to trade, his defense, his contract. This just adds an element there, and teams don't like the unknown.
Yeah, Erik, is this a big red flag for teams? I mean, already you've got a limited number of teams that would likely be looking at Kanter because, again, big man in a small man's league. Is this just another red flag to those limited teams that might be looking at Kanter?
What's the color in between like yellow and green? Is it like blue? Is that yellow and green make blue? Is that what it is?
Yes, yellow and blue make green.
Pardon me not knowing how to mix my primary colors, but I think it's a blue flag. The red flag is Enes Kanter's defense and his position and his defense at the said position that he plays. Because in today's NBA, as you alluded to, Jenny, you got to be able to defend on the perimeter and switches. Kanter's shown that he's not really capable of doing that. He's a capable post defender when it's just one-on-one, but when he gets out in space, that's a scary proposition with the Thunder, with any other team in the league. And we saw that in the Rockets series. When he's not negating the points that he's giving up on the defensive end, that's when it's a problem. When his offense isn't efficient, then the defense is even more of a glaring problem. So to me, this one weekend incident and him, being outspoken about his beliefs again, that's not so much the problem for teams as it is that this guy is a guy that's going to be, great on offense, but is always going to be somewhat of a liability defensively.
Barry, you mentioned earlier the Thunder would have preferred he not have these problems for a lot of reasons, but does trade value rise towards the top of reasons that they wish this wouldn't have happened?
Oh, maybe. I mean, they're just sort of a hung-up organization in general. I mean, they don't like the things out of the ordinary, but definitely, I think it does. It at least adds to the discussion of any potential trade. And everybody that trades for somebody in the NBA, every organization that drafts somebody, free agency, any player acquisition. Virtually every team does intensive research and investigation into that player and what some of the personal situations that he has. And this is going to be one with Enes Kanter. So I don't know that it will affect the trade viability of Enes Kanter, but it certainly has the potential to.
Guys, it strikes me that, the NBA is not a league that you don't see a lot of teams making decisions like the NFL in terms of domestic violence situations or, something that happened with Joe Mixon. There aren't a ton of guys getting into the NBA that have that in the background. So you don't have a lot of track record to go on here. How do teams deal with stuff like this? I think what Erik said is right. I think it's more about play on the court and deficiencies on the court than anything that happened here. But it is interesting. You've got guys that have been outspoken in their support for Black Lives Matter, for, against police violence. But you don't sort of have the questionable moves like you see in the NFL a lot of times. What are teams going to do and how are teams going to react? And so I don't know. I think it's an interesting case study to see what does happen with Enes Kanter in the trade situation.
To me, it's not a question of Enes Kanter's character or any of those.
No.
It's just a question of safety. Is he actually going to be available if you trade for him this time next year? Is he going to be around? Is he going to be in Turkey? Is he going to be wherever? So that's like Brett said it, the unknown.
Yeah.
That slight possibility that something could happen with Enes Kanter will give people pause.
And it's also isn't a situation like, say, a Colin Kaepernick where he's being outspoken and saying something or making a statement about the U.S. and the state of the United States. Mm-hmm. It'd be one thing if Enes Kanter was being really outspoken about how he feels that Turkish people are being treated in the United States or something wrong with the U.S. government and how it's being run. But Kanter's speaking out about the Turkish government. So that's something that a lot of season ticket holders or people who are invested in these NBA teams might not have a great understanding about. They frankly might not care about. They just want Kanter to go out there and ball. But if he's offending their their sensibilities, and as Americans, then that would be something that would be a little bit more abrasive and teams might shy away from.
Yeah, I think politically it's less controversial than LeBron James coming out in support of Hillary Clinton, honestly, because there is not division among Americans, even among Americans who are informed about this. Most of them would agree with his stance on Erdogan. I mean, almost nobody would say, oh, you're wrong about this. He seems like a really great guy. That's not something that's going to be, it just wouldn't be something that would spark a lot of controversy. I think the other thing is, he's almost gone out of his way to make this strictly about Turkey. Erdogan was invited and did visit Washington, D.C., and he addressed some of the things that happened on that visit, his bodyguards getting into an altercation with some protesters. Enes Kanter mentioned that. He did not criticize the American government for having Erdogan here. He didn't talk about any of that stuff. So I think he's been very careful, seemingly at least, not to be critical of the U.S. government, and that does make a big difference.
All right, guys, lots to dissect there. We may know more about Enes Kanter's future with the Thunder on draft night, which leads us to this next question. Yesterday was actually the deadline for upperclassmen to pull out of the NBA draft if they so chose. We now know who's in, both seniors and underclassmen. So, Barry, let's start with you. Targets at number 21 for the Thunder. Do you feel like there's a guy or two out there that might be of interest to the Thunder if they don't do something draft night trade-wise?
I claim no knowledge of what the Thunder's thinking on draft night. Zero, literal. But I do have a couple of guys I like. Now, you guys are going to have to help me with the names because I don't get too deep into it, but the kid from SMU, Semi,
pass it to Brett.
There you go. I like it.
Oh, Jaylee? Yeah. I'm not 100% sure how to say it.
Good size. Yeah.
He's from small town Kansas. Can I just say that? I think he's from Baldwin City, Kansas.
I retract my endorsement. But no, I
went to Duke and then ended up at SMU.
I like the guy. He can play. He's athletic, play on the perimeter, shot well at SMU. I don't know if he'll be available at 21. Most likely he's going to go in the teens, but he's a guy I like.
Package deal. Get his guy Shake Milton to come down to Oklahoma City too. He can shoot it a little bit, and he's from Owasso. We're going to have a strictly NBA draft pronunciation version of Thunder Thursday because there's a guy from Indiana, OG Anunoby.
That one I can say.
There you go.
Who is my draft crush who is not going to make it to the Thunder. But, this is a really deep draft. We talked about it before. There are going to be some guys there that are available that can do a lot of things that the modern NBA is looking for. The Tyler Lydons of Syracuse, TJ Leaf of UCLA, who can stretch it out to the three-point line and also show off a little bit of athleticism, surprising athleticism around the rim. I still like Oregon's Jordan Bell. He's a versatile player at 6'8", who can guard multiple positions. He's got a high block shot rate in college, performed at the highest level in the NCAA tournament. He's a little bit of an older prospect, too, so you're not going to have to babysit a 19-year-old, 18-year-old, well, not an 18-year-old, that's not allowed anymore, but a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old coming into the league. And while we say that the Thunder is log-jammed in the front court positions, with the future of Taj Gibson in doubt as a free agent, Enes Kanter might be on the block. There's still going to be some minutes there available for somebody if the Thunder is willing to draft somebody at the power forward or center position. And not to mention Nick Collison's a free agent as well. We don't know what his future is going to be, so there's a roster spot as well. So Jordan Bell from Oregon, he's kind of a sleeper guy, or not so sleepy, but a guy that's going to be available at 21 that I think would be a guy that the Thunder could definitely look at.
I like Bell, always a rebounder. He's rebounded from his freshman year of college. I like that. I like guys who produce early. That's what I don't like about the guy from SMU. Couldn't get on the court at Duke. You wonder a little bit about how much more physically advanced he is than everybody he's playing in that league now. I have some questions about that, especially with his age. I don't like the idea of the Thunder taking a point guard unless there's some chance that a combo guard like Donovan Mitchell from Louisville falls there. I like him a lot. He's probably not going to fall to 21. But if they're going to go on the wing,
no way
he's falling there. He might go in the lottery at this point. He's a guy who's really shooting up boards. But because I like the idea of them going out and getting a more experienced point guard, I like maybe looking at the wing and maybe looking at a guy who might take some time to develop. Luke Kennard is a guy who might be able to help you. Maybe he could play a few minutes at point. I don't think he's a point guard, but he's a good shooter from Duke. I'm intrigued by Terrence Ferguson, the kid who's playing in Australia, born in Tulsa, originally, then played in Texas, originally committed to Arizona, was a five-star prospect, and one of the better athletes and a good shooter in his high school class, but didn't play a freshman year of college. Intrigued by him. One guy off the board, we talked about the deadline coming, Hamidou Diallo, a guy who did not play at Kentucky, went there, sat out the second semester, was eligible to be a none and done, he is going to go back and play. So he's a guy who would have been maybe in that range and a really intriguing prospect because he's got crazy athleticism, but he's off the board.
Yeah.
Brett definitely wins the pronunciation battle between us three here. We are struggling. Brett's on top of his game.
It's clear. It's clear. There's no doubt about it. Guys, our guy Darnell Mayberry. Easy for me to say. I can't even say names of people I know, for crying out loud. Longtime Thunder beat writer, now edits our Thunder coverage. He's of the mind that the Thunder has to get a veteran guy. They have to do a trade. They don't need to go younger. They need to get somebody that can help Russell Westbrook right now. That draft night trade scenario on the table. Are you guys of the mind that maybe Barry wants to opt out since he's already said, I have no idea what the Thunder's going to do, but is it more likely the Thunder does something like that or picks at 21? This is a deep draft. What's the feeling amongst you guys about what the likelihood is there?
I think the likelihood that they make a trade is probably slightly higher than the likelihood that they bring in a young player because they already were like the third youngest team in the league last year. Closer to draft time, you're going to get a better gauge of what they want to do because there's going to be a lot of stuff leaking out about guys being available in trades, guys that teams want to move on from, maybe some longer contracts or some older guys. And, the Thunder traditionally hasn't taken on, a ton of older players, but at the same time, this is a unique situation in that they're still trying to build around Russell Westbrook. They made a trade last year at draft time to do what they thought would strengthen the team at the time, and it has strengthened the team. Been bringing in Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis. They thought they'd be strengthening it to go along with Kevin Durant.
Sure.
But I think it's a distinct possibility that the Thunder could either trade the pick or even trade back in the draft and get multiple draft picks in this draft in the second round or get a first rounder next year. Because remember, next year they're not going to have their first rounder either. That goes to Utah.
It feels like there are a lot more options and possibilities that they don't draft at 21 than they do. I mean, I could be wrong about that. I don't know whether it's a trade to get a guy that's in a different spot or, like Erik said, it just feels like with all the moving and shaking Sam Presti does, the likelihood of drafting at 21 seems light, right?
It seems it mainly because of what Erik said. They're the third youngest team in the league and the youngest team to make the playoffs. They don't really need another young player. I could also see a scenario if there's a guy, and there may be a European guy or two in that range. I'm not kind of smitten with any of those guys, but we'll get a better sense of how good those guys. I need to talk to Fran Fraschilla. He'll tell me how good these guys are. But maybe they could stash a guy in Europe for a couple of years because they don't really. Not only do they not need a young player, they might not even need a roster spot taken up by a guy who's not going to contribute if they can't find somebody who they feel like is going to do that. I'd be intrigued by them looking to trade up if they package Enes Kanter in that 21 and could do something because I like OG Anunoby and I like Donovan Mitchell a whole lot. And if they could move up into a range where they could get one of those guys, I think those guys could help them. But I do think what makes a lot of sense is trying to get back into the second round. It is a nice deep draft. Maybe a guy like Juwan Evans at Oklahoma State is there, and you could draft your backup point guard in a later position.
Okay, last question about draft night, Barry. It's a lot of scenarios on the table, but ultimately, what will be a successful draft night for the Thunder? When we get to midnight or approximately midnight on draft night, what are we going to be able to say this has been a success for the Thunder
if they've been able to trade Enes Kanter for something fairly valuable.
Okay.
To me, that's the key. We all love Enes, but we also know that for this team to improve, he's probably going to have to go. Just because of this cap, because of his style of play. He's their best trade chip outside of the top three. So if they can move Enes Kanter for quality, it's a good night.
All right, let's talk about the NBA Finals, guys. We don't have a final yet.
We have a final.
I think we have a final.
For sure?
Period.
All right, it's not official in the East yet. How about that? The Cavs and Celtics still have a game the Cavs need to win, but largely believe that will happen, if not tonight, soon, and we'll have our Cavs-Warriors rematch. Guys, can the Cavs contend with what we've seen out of the Warriors? It's just been a rollover in the West. Can the Cavs compete, Brett?
Yeah, they can. I think they will. I think they'll be competitive. I mean, there's demonstrated performance that LeBron James is very difficult for the Warriors to deal with. That Kyrie Irving gives them problems, that the rebounding that Tristan Thompson can do, maybe even Kevin Love, the way he's played in these playoffs. There are some problems there. I think it's going to be hard for them to win every game in Cleveland. I think Golden State's going to win an eventual series between those two teams. But I think Cleveland is going to take. I think Cleveland's going to take a couple of games, maybe as many as 3, but I think 2 is. I think 6 is a reasonable expectation.
I guess maybe I should have said, anybody going to pick the Cavs? Anybody picking the Cavs to win in the finals?
Cavs in 7.
Ooh.
Wow.
It's impressive.
The Cavs aren't going to be intimidated by Golden State. We've seen them for 2 years now go. I wouldn't say blow for blow, but not cower when Golden State barrages them. I mean, they were blown out in the first couple of games of the series last year, went down 3-1, and were able to rally back. Now, granted, that took a Draymond Green suspension for some flailing of the legs and some accumulation from the Thunder series. But look, this LeBron James-led team, they're going to have trouble defending Kyrie Irving in pick and roll. They're going to have trouble defending LeBron James in pick and roll. Now, granted, they could probably defend it better than any other team in the league because of the versatility they have. It's still going to be a problem for them. And the thing that I keep going back to is Kevin Durant has made this team exponentially better. There's no question. But we have not seen Kevin Durant in an NBA Finals setting in 5 years. I want to see how he reacts. I want to see how he reacts when the game is tight. And I want to see if he can get over the fact that LeBron James is on the other side of the court, because LeBron James is eating Kevin Durant's lunch the entire time Kevin Durant has been in the league. Now, and that's nothing against Kevin Durant. It's just
LeBron James is LeBron James.
Because LeBron James has been LeBron James against Kevin Durant and the Thunder since they've been in the league. So I really do want to see how Kevin Durant, the great season that he's had, reacts when the moment is the biggest, because he's the difference between these last 2 iterations of the Warriors we've seen and now. And if the pressure gets hot, Kevin Durant is going to have to take the brunt of that pressure because he's been the change and the difference.
And unlike Durant, LeBron will be in his 7th consecutive NBA Finals, guys. An unbelievable run by LeBron. Barry, are you picking the Cavs?
Nope.
I've got the Cavs. I got the Cavs winning 0 games.
Whoa.
I think it's going to be a sweep.
You think it's going to be a sweep?
I think it's going to be a sweep. I think Golden State's just fantastic, and I don't know how you guard them, and I don't think Cleveland will. I like what the Cavaliers have done. They've proven that they're an outstanding team. LeBron's fantastic. Kyrie Irving's unbelievable. But they've been beating some teams in the East that aren't that great. Boston can't shoot. Toronto can't shoot. Let me promise you, Golden State can shoot. So I'm going to take the Warriors in 4.
I agree that the East might not have teams of the Cavs caliber. But aren't the Warriors playing a team right now that's a shell of what they were in the regular season? Kawhi Leonard's out. Tony Parker's out. I mean, just take any one of those 2 out, and the Spurs are going to be hard-pressed to compete.
You make a good point. The only thing that gives me pause is that when Kawhi Leonard was in the game in Game 1, San Antonio dominated Golden State early.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that shows me that, hey, something's amiss. But I think Golden State was going to beat San Antonio even if Kawhi Leonard was healthy. I just don't know how you guard him, and I don't think Cleveland will.
This is crazy that we've got somebody picking Cleveland in 7, Barry picking Golden State in a sweep, and Brett kind of in the middle.
Splitting the difference, right down the middle.
Does that, I mean, we really don't know what's going to happen
So they're
here,
both
folks.
going to win?
I think they're both going to win.
One of us knows.
Somebody
Don't know who, but one of us is going to be right.
Unless the Cavs sweep, then we're all wrong. But I don't think that. Here's what I think. That is not
If
happening.
Cavs sweep a party in the streets of Oklahoma City.
We know that's going to
I'll
happen.
bring the flag.
The Warriors to me were the better team last year. They were the better team the year before.
Yeah.
But as we've seen, the better team doesn't always win. I thought the Thunder
And LeBron James. Just so we can get that out there. LeBron James is in this series.
And Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love, too. Kevin Love didn't show up until the last game of the series against the Warriors last year in the NBA Finals. If he shows up from the beginning, I think that there's a possibility that the Cavaliers can be a contender in this series.
All right, by the time we get together again, we'll have some games behind us. I don't think the Warriors can sweep by the time we meet next, but hopefully we'll have some NBA Finals to talk about, and who knows what else. You never know what's going to happen with the Thunder. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.